This will be the most corrupt election in the history of our country.
Welcome to The Real News. I'm Jaisal Noor. Just 35 days until the November 3rd election, Joe Biden and Donald Trump faced off for the first of 3 presidential debates. Today, our panel watched the debate in case you didn't, so you don't have to, or if you did watch it and you want to join in on this discussion, we're live right now at The Real News, so send us your comments. Many people called this debate a disaster. It was supposed to be moderated by Chris Wallace, but he was MIA for most of it. He could not stop President Trump from continually talking over Joe Biden. Here's a clip.
You've already fired most of them because they did a good job.
Some people don't do a good job. With you,
go ahead. Wait a minute. You get the final word, Mr.
Well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me.
Hey, let me just say to you.
No. I'm Mr. President.
3.5 million, Joe.
That is simply...
Why?
So we know historically debates don't necessarily make big outcomes of the election, but tonight's debate did give some important clarity on a number of issues. Among them, Trump continued to lie about the scope of the COVID-19 pandemic. Here's another clip.
Before November 1st. It could also be after
when it's
that.
Generally available.
Well, we're going to deliver it right away. We have the military all set up logistically. They're all set up. We have our military that delivers soldiers, and they can do 200,000 a day. They're going to be delivering.
This is the same man
it's
who
all
told
set
you
up.
By Easter this would be gone away. By the warm weather, it'd be gone. Miraculous, like a miracle. And by the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm, and that would take care of it. This is the same man.
That was said sarcastically, you know that. That was said sarcastically.
And so here's the deal. This man is talking about a vaccine. Every serious company is talking about maybe having a vaccine done by the end of the year. But the distribution of that vaccine will not occur until sometime beginning or the middle of next year to get it out, if we get the vaccine.
Well, there's a lot to unpack in this debate, and to do that, we're joined by 2 guests, Maurice Mitchell of the Working Families Party and our own Steve Horn, who is a climate reporter. First, I want to get you, let's, Maurice, start with you. What's your overall reaction? Were there winners or losers besides the American people having to sit through this? What are your thoughts?
Well, it's good to be here. I mean, I don't like to kind of engage in that sort of like presidential horse race, like who's up, who's down. But one of the things that I felt strongly after witnessing that was that the president's performance was by design, basically a tool to create more cynicism and more despair, broad-based. The more cynicism and despair that are just like, it's just sort of bubbling up in the body politic is good for the president. And he's desperate. I saw desperation. I saw worry, and I saw incoherence. And I think what I said recently on Twitter is that everybody who felt what we felt, I think everybody in the country witnessed that, saw that we need to do everything in our power to organize like our lives depend on it over the next few weeks.
Steve, climate change wasn't a topic for this debate, which is incredible. A total disservice to the crisis that we're facing right now. It was mentioned in the last 15 minutes. Both candidates were asked directly about it. If we have clip 6, can we roll that now? Okay, we're going to come back to that, but let's get your thoughts, Steve.
Yeah, I'll come back to climate change. I'll just give a big picture thought. I think I'll just go with where the debate left off, and I think maybe we'll come back to this later. But the most alarming thing, and I think it goes to what Maurice was just saying, to his desperation and to the fact that he probably knows that he's down. He knows he's down in the polls. He knows that on election day things might not be looking great. Or what did he do at the very end of the debate today? He did not say that he would concede. 1, 2. He did not say that he would say he won. So say it's tied or whatever. He might say that he won, and he basically introduced the idea that, which he's been doing for years, that the debate will be a fraud. I mean, he pretty much called it a fraud already weeks before it's in the midst of happening, but weeks before the final results are starting to be counted in many states. He's already introduced the idea that it's a fraud, and he has a rabid base who very likely won't accept the results. And I think that's a very serious thing that we have to be prepared for, is that come election day forward, there's going to be a huge block of this country led by the president that doesn't accept the results. And so whatever happens on election day, we're going to have months after that a fallout that I don't even think that we're totally prepared for, even kind of know. But I think we saw a preview of it in my hometown of Kenosha, where we had those militia people marching down the streets with guns, and some people got killed. And I'm not saying people are going to get killed, but I am saying that we have violent people in this country that are being riled up by the president of the United States who might lose and not accept the results. And that's something that I think that we all have to be prepared for happening in the months ahead.
And,
so Maurice,
and just to that,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
I wanted to get your, go ahead. Yeah.
Sure. So the president, when asked if he would urge his followers to wait to ensure that every vote was counted and then to accept the results, he said, "I will urge my followers to look carefully, to go into polling booths and polling places and to look carefully," right? And so to me, again, that is the mark of a desperate president that is witnessing power leave his hands and is weeks away from election where he's pretty confident he's going to lose. And I think the best defense here is offense. I think, people in the viewing audience need to organize and vote like in numbers never before. So he doesn't just lose, but he loses handily. So that scenario that we're all concerned about doesn't happen. That his outright rejection by the American people is so clear and so handy and so outright numerically that in multiple states he's rejected and he has to give up power.
So I want to play a couple clips from the debate. I wanted to play clip 8 and then clip 4, if we have those ready.
What's going on? Take a look at West Virginia, mailmen selling the ballots. They're being sold. They're being dumped in rivers. This is a horrible thing for our country. This is not going to end well.
There is no
this is not going to end well.
5 states.
But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared to specifically
do it?
Go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
Do you want to call them? What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
who would you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
So there you have it. Trump making false claims about voter fraud, which his whole own administration has debunked again and again, every nonpartisan expert, including the host, Chris Wallace, who did an awful job, but even he pushed back against Trump on that. And then again, Trump refusing to condemn white supremacists. Maurice, just respond.
There's quite a lot there to respond to. So forgive me if I can't get to all of it. But to your last point, and I think the most serious point, Trump had a clear opening to do what even the most basic politician could easily do, which is condemn white supremacists and white nationalist violence. And he took that opportunity to say, Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. Now, stand by are orders by a superior to await additional orders. And I think that tells you the psyche of the president and how he relates to and who he thinks are his people. He thinks that the white supremacists, the Proud Boys, the white nationalists are his people. And they certainly have acted in ways to flank this president. And again, I think it speaks to the desperation. So, I remember a reporter called the president what did he say? A weak man, strong man, right? And I think you witnessed the behavior of a weak man, strong man throughout the entire debate. Somebody who's vulnerable, who's scared, who knows that his time is running out, and is grasping for anything and is willing to do or say anything. Now, we all need to be concerned. Absolutely. These threats are real, but I think it's important that we don't allow these threats to further cement our cynicism, our fear, because that will ultimately provide a suppressive impact to the vote. That's what he wants. He wants us to feel afraid. He wants us to feel that the Proud Boys are lurking around any polling place, because that will create a suppressive impact of the vote. And the less people that go out and vote, the less people that believe in the integrity of mail-in ballots, the better for him.
So Maurice, you talk about needing to get people out to vote, but we also, on the other side, Trump said a couple times to Biden, you've lost the left, when Biden said, I don't support Medicare for all. I don't support a Green New Deal. What do you say to people on the left that say Biden isn't giving me something to fight for, something to believe in? Despite everything Trump is saying, what's your message to people? So
it's no news. Sure, it's no news that we at the Working Families Party have had serious policy disagreements with Joe Biden. We also endorse Joe Biden, and I want to explain why. Joe Biden and voting for Joe Biden and his presidency is a door. It's not a destination. We have a very clear choice. We either double down on neo-fascism with Donald Trump and basically double down on a president that will align with right-wing fascists and right-wing nationalists all around the world, including the right wing of Israel, the right wing in Brazil, the right wing in Hungary. Or we have an opening where if Biden is elected, our movements could lead and be the main protagonists in that moment. And so for us, we're not surprised when we have different policy perspectives than Biden and his campaign. But we're also very, very clear about the huge gulf between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And the last thing I'll say is that if we're waiting for Joe Biden or his campaign in order to feel a sense of enthusiasm, in order to vote Trump out, then we haven't been paying attention. Our movements, the movement for Black Lives, the Sunrise Movement, and the climate justice movement, I heard our movements very clear in the debate stage. We've set the terms of the debate, and they've often debated our ideas. It's now for our movements to lead in this election to defeat Donald Trump, and then set the conditions for us to lead with governance, to be able to push our agenda. And the second Joe Biden is president, our movements need to apply as much pressure on him in order to demand a Green New Deal and other policies.
Jaisal, if you don't mind, I'm just going to, before we get to this question, I just want to clarify for people watching, just in case they don't understand, just to go back to the right wing thing. The Proud Boys, just to explain quickly who they are, that is the fascist vanguard of the Trump movement. Those are the people, that's kind of an iteration of the militia that I was referring to before, that these armed people in the streets, kind of most prominently maybe in Portland right now. Those are the Proud Boys. So that was not even a dog whistle to them. That was the loudest whistle that you could give to him. But to speak to the dog whistle for a second, he mentioned the city of Philadelphia. He used to mention the city of Chicago. He as you know, Jaisal, and as everyone at The Real News knows, he used to do this all the time for Baltimore. He mentions these urban areas. That's a dog whistle for cities with, lots of Black people, lots of more brown people, more diverse communities. Those are both extreme. Those are more than dog whistles. I think that maybe 25, 30 years ago when George H.W. Bush was debating, those are dog whistles. I don't really know what to call what Trump does, but this is kind of the word.
It's a megaphone.
But Biden called him a racist. Yeah, Biden called him out and said, "You are a racist," after Trump said that, getting training on racial sensitivity is racist. So that also went down. I wanted to play a couple more clips. I wanted to talk about climate change, which was barely touched upon in this debate. And of course, with everything else, the framing of these questions by the moderator were just abysmal. I can think of about 340 million other Americans that could have done a better job, to be honest. But so let's go to SOT 6 and 7, please.
What do you believe about the science of climate change, sir?
I believe that we have to do everything we can to have immaculate air, immaculate water, and do whatever else we can that's good. You know, we're planting 1 billion trees, the Billion Tree Project, and it's very exciting.
You believe
for a lot of people.
that human pollution, greenhouse gas emissions contributes to the global warming of this
I think
planet?
a lot of things do, but I think to an extent, yes. I think to an extent, yes. But I also think we have to do better management of our forests. Every year, I get the call, California's burning. California's burning. If that was cleaned, if you had forest management, good forest management, you wouldn't be getting those calls. You know, in Europe, they have forest cities. They're called forest cities. They maintain their forests. They manage their forests. I was with the head of
what your
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. We're not going to build plants that, in fact, are great polluting plants. We're going to build
Green New
So let's start, Steve, with that second clip where you had Biden for a moment defending the Green New Deal, saying it's going to pay for itself, which we know it will, but then saying, look, I don't support it. And then we also heard Trump talking about his trying to explain his views on climate change. I was left kind of confused.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's clear by now, kind of just to iterate what Maurice was saying, Biden is not 100% a supporter of the Green New Deal by any means. And that is, but like, I think what was interesting is to go to what Maurice said also is that's now the way the debate is framed is, do you support this or do you not support it? That's the term of the debate now. And so that'll be up to those in the grassroots to either, achieve that or not, or achieve elements of it. It's not a sort of a one-shot thing. But I think that's been clear, that became really clear during the Democratic Party process and the policy platforms and all of that, which we've covered a lot at the Real News over the past month. So putting that aside, I think the two other parts that were policy centric in what was discussed, one was that billion tree thing. That is a real thing that the World Economic Forum pushes. That is a real thing that the GOP is pushing. That is a key part of, you could say, the neoliberal kind of right-centric flank of neoliberalism supports is that kind of thing. So that's an actual policy. It's not something that Trump just made up. Trump also supports it. And that was something that was being discussed earlier this year before COVID happened. And so that's one thing. And then the other thing is the thing about the forest and forest management. And as I always say, there's a kernel of truth. A lot of things that Trump says is the kernel of truth. And we could talk about this for a long time, the failures of forest management, but I think that what we should talk about with Trump, the missing context is, if you're going to talk about forest management and doing what he said, I don't know the percentage, but a lot of forest land in the United States is controlled by the federal government, the United States Forest Service. So you could look at what he's saying, if he was actually being honest, as a huge self-criticism. And that actually came up in his recent visit in California with Newsom. I think it was a couple weeks ago, where it was pointed out to him when he was criticizing forest management right in front of Newsom and some of his top climate policy aides is, hey, this forest land that you're talking about in California, over 50% of it is owned by the federal government and controlled by the federal government. And so the onus is kind of on you. So that's just really important context, I think, to point out when you're talking about that thing. That said, there are lots of legitimate things to talk about with forest management and the wild and urban interface with housing and all of that. And of course, the moderator has no clue about what those issues are, didn't do his research, couldn't push back, is not allowed to push back. So, they were just able to kind of rattle off a few talking points without much context behind any of them.
So, Steve, what question should the moderator have asked the candidates about climate change today?
Well, yeah, so the question he did, the important thing is the question he did ask is, do you believe in climate change? Which is kind of like a kindergarten level question about climate change. Do you believe in it? That's the real question you should have asked is, we know that climate change is an established threat. It's a global emergency. What are you planning on doing about it? And I think that should have been the framework, and maybe asked for a few examples. Do you support X? Do you support Y? Do you support Z? Name 3 things that people in the climate justice movement or climate scientists are saying need to be done. Ask them, do you support those things? And that is why the framing, as you said, Jaisal, was such a failure by the moderator, Chris Wallace.
All right. And if you, the folks watching, I know there's a lot of people watching right now. We got like 700 or 800 people watching just on our YouTube stream. If you guys have questions, please put them in the chat and we will try to get to them before we end. But I did want to play, we talked about this, but I wanted to play Trump's own words, clip 9 about the election. Can we hear that? Oh, don't have 9. But, to reiterate, Trump told his supporters to not concede the election, to not believe, the votes coming down. Ultimately, this is something that I think we're all going to have to confront in a few weeks. Maurice, let's again, going forward, what should people be doing, starting tomorrow if they're not already, organizing in their communities and with folks about having a plan? What steps do people need to start taking?
So this is a great question. And like I said before, the best defense when it comes to this idea that Trump's going to somehow steal the election is a great offense. So everybody who's listening, if you haven't already, register to vote and then immediately apply for a mail-in ballot so that you could vote early. And in most places you can vote early and you could vote at home. And there's a number of very safe and easy ways to do that. If you need more information, you could reach out to many organizations, including mine, Working Families Party, and we could help you make that happen. So that's number one. Number two, don't simply vote, but volunteer. And volunteer in order to, there's tools that allow you to engage in what we call relational organizing, where we're reaching out to people that we know, our families, our friends, and we're ensuring that they go out and vote and that they have voting plans. Number three, you could also volunteer to phone bank and text and reach voters in swing states and in other critical battlegrounds to ensure that we have the most participation possible. Lastly, on the day of, during election day, folks should be signing up to be poll watchers and to be poll workers. Many of the poll workers are older folks. Many of those folks will not be poll working because of COVID-19. So relatively young, relatively healthy people should be signing up and to be poll workers this election, and also poll watchers in order to watch for any irregularities to ensure that that voting is happening and that everybody can vote. And also we know that there'll be long lines, especially in urban and working class communities, communities of color. There'll be long lines, and volunteering with organizations like mine, like in Philly and in Milwaukee, where we have a large base, to ensure that people online stay online, have what they need, have water, have the support so that they could vote on election day. And then lastly, we should be talking about election season, because it's true that because we're going to have so many ballots to be counted, we might not know the result for a few days or a few weeks. And so we need to acculturate ourselves to have some patience, to create a sense of calm so that every vote is counted. And then we need to do everything, use all of the tools. Like I talked about voting, I talked about volunteering, and we need to use our First Amendment rights, our ability to protest if Donald Trump and his folks are attempting to somehow create an environment of fear. We need to de-escalate and create an environment of victory for working people and go out and make sure that our streets are our streets. And so I think if we do all of those things, we can ensure that we have a safe transfer of power from the fascists that's currently in government, and regain the control of our democracy for people. I think, and the last thing I'll say is that it's not just about elections. Our democracy is a 365-day activity. Voting is just one piece of it. We need to ensure that after this election, we do not go home, right? Because there are folks with all types of views and all types of opinions that agree, like I agree, that Donald Trump should not be president. Donald Trump not being president is insufficient for the change that we all believe in. And so we need to ensure that the actual grassroots sort of structural change that we believe in happens, and that happens through the continued advocacy, protest, engagement of people who will hopefully vote this president out.
All right. Well, I want to thank you both for joining us. Steve Horn, one of our climate correspondents here at The Real News, and Maurice Mitchell, National Organizing Director with the Working Families Party, also works with Movement for Black Lives and a number of other organizations working on the ground to help elect progressives and push progressive change across the country. Thank you both for joining us. Thank you for watching the debate with us. And, thanks for all of our viewers for watching as well. We'll have more coverage on the election on therealnews.com. We're going to end with this clip of Trump talking about what his message is to his supporters when the results come down. Thank you all for watching.
is. So first for you, sir, finally for the vice president, I hope neither of you will interrupt the other. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest? And will you pledge tonight that you will not declare victory until the election has been independently certified? President Trump, you go first.
I'm urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully, because that's what has to happen. I am urging them to do it. As you know, today there was a big problem. In Philadelphia, they went in to watch. They were called poll watchers, a very safe, very nice thing. They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia, bad things. And I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. And I'll tell you what,
does that
from
mean,
a common sense,
does that mean you're going to tell your people to take to the street?
It means you have a fraudulent election. You're sending out 80 million ballots. They're not equipped to. These people aren't equipped to handle it. Number one. Number two, they cheat. They cheat. Hey, they found ballots in a waste paper basket 3 days ago, and they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all